Hello everyone, welcome to this lesson. And in this lesson our aim is to create an Amazon machine image, commonly referred to as an AMI, that we can use to launch instances in the future. So when we click on EC2 and let's say we want to launch an EC2 instance, the first step we will run into is choosing an Amazon machine image, AMI. And if you look, usually I select the first one, which is the Amazon Linux AMI, and if you look in the description you'll see that the default image includes AWS command line tools, Python, Ruby, Perl, Java. So this was created by Amazon with all the things that that Amazon has for the developers, like the command line interface and AWS tools included. So similarly, we can create an AMI to give it to our coworkers or our friends, by installing whatever we want. So when they want to launch an instance, they can just use that AMI instead of these AMI right here. So on the left side there's a tab in which the default setting is quick start. Now if you come down to my AMIs, it should be empty, right? It should be empty because we haven't made any AMIs so far. At least I have no AMIs in my account. You might have some AMIs if you've already worked with it. So there are also community AMIs made by the community for you to use, but our interest is to make our personal AMI in this lesson. So once again, quick recap: AMI are essentially images that has stuff installed on it so that we can reuse them when we launch an instance and not have to install the things all over again. For example, a web server. If you're always provisioning web server in the same style, then you don't want to be installing Apache web server over and over. It's just inefficient. So you can just make an AMI with stuff already installed, so when you launch another instance with the same AMI that you create, the web server is already there. And this stuff is very helpful in auto scaling and that kind of stuff. So this is how we will be working. The first step, we will be launching an EC2 instance with some user data passed in. Now user data, I'm going to quickly show you on the console. So user data is when you pass a script in this box. If it was through the console, you basically write, first of all, you write the shebang, and starts with this and something like bin bash, and you do stuff like yum install httpd, stuff like this. But we'll be using the command line interface. So basically the idea is we want to install Apache web server before we even SSH into the instance. So we'll be doing that in this lesson. And the second step we'll do is we will create an image of that instance through the command line interface once again. And the third step will be to verify that there is a web server running on the instance. In the fourth step, we will launch another instance with the AMI that we created. The fifth step will be to make sure that the web server is running on the second instance that we create, so that just to make sure everything is working properly. So very quickly, I want to show you how I would go about creating an AMI from the console. The AMI process, the creation process from the console is as easy as actions, image, create image, right? Similarly, it's easy on the command line as well. So let's move over to the command line. So I'm using the code that I will be providing to you. It's on my GitHub page, and I will have the link on the link below this lesson. So, but basically, this is my GitHub page, and there is a repo called AWS CLI commands. I've added this to the first section of this course. I've recently added it, so if you haven't downloaded everything that I've used in this course, and everything is on the same repo. Now for this lesson, we want to create an AMI folder. So I'm going into here, and there's two different files in here. Now this is the steps that we'll be taking. So I'm actually going over these steps right now. Step 1 is launch an EC2 instance. Step 2 is check the user data, work and the web server is running. Step 3 is create an image from that instance. Step 4 is use that image to launch an instance. Step 5 is verify the web server is running by typing that IP on a browser. So if you want, you can pause the video and go over the step one more time, and also if you think I'm going very fast, then you can pause the video and go to the steps here. But anyways, the second file that I have here is the user data that will bootstrap a server with Apache web server, right? So our EC2 instance with Apache web server. Now I copied this piece of code directly from Amazon's example. So it's basically installing HTTPD or Apache web server, and it's adding permissions and ownership to the user so that we can do stuff in there. And finally, I've added one line that is supposed to say hello world when we go to the web server. So if everything works good, we should be able to see hello world because of this line, echo hello world. All right, so I have that. I'm currently in that folder, and I have two files, user data and this. Now I'm interested in the user data.txt file. Now we haven't done this so far. I'm going to show you the way to use the user data to launch an instance. So basically what I would do is AWS EC2 run instances image ID. Now I copied the image ID earlier that was on the top of Amazon's list of AMIs. So basically we're using the Amazon AMI here, right? So whatever region you're in, your AMI is probably different, so make sure you have the right AMI before you move on. So image ID, now we need the instance type. Instance type is going to be t2.micro. Okay, now we need the key name. My key pair 1. Okay, now we are doing the thing that we haven't done yet, and we're passing in user dash data, right? Just like there was a box on the console, you can pass in user data by saying dash dash user data. Now you could pass either like a JSON file, or you can JSON piece of text, or you can actually pass on a file, and we're going to use the file that we have called user data.txt. So file user data.txt. So we are passing that file as user data. Now I could press enter, and I would have an instance. In fact, I'm gonna launch this instance. Oops, I have a typo. I have one more typo. All right. Now, as you can see, when we launch an instance just by the command we put in earlier, there's a lot more, there's a lot of text we get in return. Now, what I want to show you is a really cool way to get exactly what we want to move on to the next step. So I'm going to launch one more instance, and I'm going to say something like instance underscore ID equals $. I'm going to put everything that I typed earlier for the command inside parentheses. And come to the end of the command, right? So my goal for this command is to extract the instance ID only, so that I can use it for my next command. So if I wanted to do that, then what I would do is I would say query, like we used earlier, instances, it will be dot instance ID, right? So we're looking for instances. Inside of instances, we're looking for instance ID. So we've said that much so far. Now the return we get is in form of a JSON, like a key value pair kind of thing, right? So what if we want it in normal text? Like if I said this, I would get something like this in result with the quotes, which I don't want. So to get just the text, I would say, and we know this from previous lessons, output text. So at this point, everything would be outputted as text. All right, so once I have this, I close the parentheses. So what this should do is to store everything after the $. So we'll save the output of everything after the $, to a variable named instance ID, and let's see what this does. Now it doesn't show me any output, because basically what I did was just to save the output to instance ID. Now if I say echo $, instance underscore ID, I can see this is the instance ID that I wanted to find, right? Now this is going to be different than this, because if you remember, we launched two instances. This was one, this was a different instance. So once we launch the instance, if we go and look at the steps right here, check the user data worked and the web server is running by typing in the web server IP on a browser and verifying that it says hello world. There's some typo in here, but anyways, let's go to the console, EC2 dashboard, instances, and the one that's just launched, the latest one, is this one. I'm gonna go to the IP and copy hello world. So it worked, right? We haven't SSH'd into the instance, and we already have a web server with whatever we wanted to running. So this means we can move on to step number 3. Step 3 says create an image from that instance ID and save the image ID to a variable image ID. The same way we saved stuff into instance ID variable. So actually I can just copy this. Alright, so now that worked, right? So basically I want to explain what happened. So I copied that line of code which does the same thing as earlier, image ID equals $, and there's a command, so create image. This is the command to create an image, AWS EC2 create image instance ID, and right over here instead of the instance ID, instead of looking for that instance ID, I typed in a $, instance underscore ID, which is my variable that I saved earlier in here. Instance ID is this, so that I can just say instance ID and it will pass in this value. I have to say name is my server, and I also have to provide description and AMI for my web server. Now I just need this much to create an image. Oops, I have to create this. I need only this much to create an image, but if I want to save that image ID that I created, then I once again do query image ID and output that into text and save it into image ID. So I have, if I say echo image underscore ID, image underscore ID, I think it got messed up because we somehow managed to type this twice. So what we need to do at this point is create one more image. So basically I'm gonna say my server 1. This is why I'm getting an error. Okay, so if I say echo image ID, then I have an image ID right here. Now the reason I saved this image ID in a variable is because step 4 of our file says use that image to launch an instance, and as if you see, I'm going to launch an instance just like we launch a normal EC2 instance, but instead of passing in the image ID and looking for the image ID, I can just pass in the variable name $image underscore ID. Instance type is T2 micro, key name is my key pair, and we really don't need to do the querying this time. If you want, it's optional. I think I'm going to skip the querying because all we need after this point is the IP address. Okay, so one more time I want to echo the image underscore ID before we move on to the next command. So this is our image ID, and our next command is step number 4, use that image to launch an instance. So actually, let me just type it in. So AWS EC2 run dash instances image ID $image underscore ID. So basically I'm saying whatever I saved in the image ID variable, put that in for image ID, and I do need the instance type of t2.micro. Now everything else is optional, right? If I just have this, then my instance will be launched in a default VPC, so I don't even need to provide a key pair name because I'm not going to log into my instance. Well, it's, you should be providing a key name of A, B, C, D. But just to demonstrate to you that you can launch an instance without a key pair name, I'm just gonna say enter. There it is. So we have a new instance with the AMI that we created earlier. So what I'm gonna do is gonna go to EC2 dashboard, running instances. So the one that I just created is 1051. This one. I'm gonna go to the public IP, copy this. Hello world. Okay, so this was our new one, and this one had the hello world as well. So basically that means that we were successful in launching an EC2 instance with our AMI. So that concludes the lesson. And if you've been wondering why I have all these instances running, in the middle of the video I had to I ran into an error and I had to pause and restart all over. But if you follow these steps, you should be golden, right? Everything should work fine. And if you have any problems, just let me know in the course comment section. So at this point, before we conclude, I want to show you that the AMI stored here will be stored on Amazon S3, so it will incur charges. So if you don't delete this, you might if you have stuff already on S3, then you might be paying money just for storing your AMI, and since you probably won't use this AMI, then it would be a good idea to delete this AMI. So just gonna well, first thing I'm gonna try deregister, which is not gonna work because we still have an instance running. So the right way to do it would be to get everything except for my thing that I had when we started, and make sure terminated instances are not going to be terminated. So I'm going to terminate my EC2 instance first that we created for this lesson, and then go to the AMIs. You might have to wait a little while before you can do register, because the instances have to be turned off before you can deregister the AMIs. But basically that's how you do it. And if you go to the documentation for AWS CLI, Python, just AWS CLI, then bonus points if you deregister by using command line interface. I'll leave that up to you, and that'd be a really cool mini project for you to do, mini task for you to do, and just try to find the way to deregister from the command right from somewhere here. And okay, with that, I want to say goodbye. See you in the next lesson.